Hey everybody, it's podcast time, July 30th, 2013. Got a lot to say today, been thinking about this one all night, so let's get started. Last night I was thinking about how much things have changed in just the last 10 years. You don't really think about it, but 10 years ago, and keep in mind I'm a pretty forward-thinking person, I had just gotten my first DVR. My telephone didn't get on the internet, and matter of fact, I rarely used it. And yes, I had a GPS device. It took 5 minutes to acquire a signal, and honestly, I only used it if I really had to, because it was kind of a source of humor more than anything that was really useful. Just those three inventions, the GPS, internet on cell phones, and the DVR, have really changed the way that I live my life in the last 10 years. And that doesn't even talk about all the other ways that life is different just in the last 10 years. And how that's not really a huge chunk of time to have completely revolutionized the way that we all live. It's unimaginable today to tell people to be quiet because you don't want to miss something on a TV show and you can't rewind it. It's ridiculous to think that you're going to be somewhere and not be able to take a call or not be able to find out something even minor or trivial just as soon as you want to know it. And it's certainly unimaginable to think that you're going to have to stop and ask a stranger for directions. It got me to thinking of the next 10 years, and it made me wonder if the next 10 years is going to be filled with stuff that I just couldn't possibly imagine now, or if there are some trends, any trends, that really point to the way that I'm going to be living my life in the year 2023. I think something we're all talking about now is wearable computing, whether it's something like Google Glass or a smartwatch or something like that. We shouldn't really be so quick to dismiss the idea of wearable computing, even though honestly, what's out there right now is pretty sad. But it's first-generation technology, and maybe 10 years from now there will be something that makes a whole lot more sense. I envision a pair of glasses or a contact lens that really does work very well without you having to use jerky motions or talk to it in some sort of weird code. Mostly, I think what we're going to see is a breaking down of traditional categories. Right now, you have a cell phone, you have a tablet, you have a television. I think in 10 years, you won't have any of these things. On the other hand, you'll be surrounded by the kind of information that you'd normally get from them. I imagine some sort of technology which allows you to just roll something over a wall or a window or something like that, and it becomes a television or monitor or gestural input device just anytime you need it. And when it's not needed, it just disappears. That may seem like science fiction today, but the idea of finding out something on the internet in the middle of nowhere was science fiction 10 years ago. The big question is going to be how you interact with it. I'm not sure that we really want to all kind of get into this spastic motion thing where you have to wave your hand 17 different ways to get the information you want. I think that kind of control will be out there, but it'll make a little bit more sense. I think voice is going to be huge, but voice has to be perfect. When you're talking to a computer, you have to be able to do it just like you're talking to a person, and I really think that's not that far off. Siri and Google do a pretty good job, but we still need another couple of generations of work on that. We also need to find a way to talk about stuff and interact with our computers in a silent mode, because, a lot of our communication right now is person to person, point to point, and we want it to be quiet. That's why we text people, because we want to say something about the person sitting next to us and we don't want them to know about it. I also think within 10 to 15 years we'll be looking at some very serious ethical conversations about computers, about the intelligence that they are actually capable of, and what that really means. We've seen it in movies and we've talked about it in apocalyptic television shows and even some articles that I wrote, but it's a very real conversation that 15 to 20 years from now we may need to have as far as how intelligent is a computer, what rights does a computer have, and to some extent, are we ever going to be able to create a computer that we can classify as alive? I think 15 to 20 years from now, we're really going to be close enough to that where we have to have that conversation. It's a little scary. Yes, I understand that. So obviously it's something that we have to approach seriously and responsibly. Every age has something that really scares them. 125 years ago, believe it or not, there were some people who thought that you would die if you went over 20 miles an hour. Really? Well, honestly, it did happen, and we go over 20 miles an hour all the time. There were also people who thought that maybe you couldn't eat or breathe in space even if you were in a capsule. Well, that turned out to not be true either. Every era has some things that really scare them, and yes, I think computer intelligence is something that is really scary, especially at the rate that computers are capable of evolving. But it's something that we'll have to address soberly and maturely and not necessarily make as many jokes about it as we do now. I have to admit I'm a little worried about what will happen when the intelligent robots find out that I love that YouTube video where Asimo keeps falling down the stairs. Luckily, that's not something I have to really think about this week, although probably ought to clean out my browser history as a result of that. Good idea. Anyway, if you have ideas for a future Solid Signal podcast, push that orange button at the top right of the Solid Signal blog, blog.solidsignal.com. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and until then, have a great week.